Good afternoon, Chris. How are you today?
Hey, Sean, doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining the Pref-Tech podcast. And our goal for today is to get our listeners and give our listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit, get to know your business, the solutions you provide, and get into depth on something that I believe the security industry doesn't go into depth enough on, and that's mustering. We tend in the security industry to concentrate on the front end of the process, and that's detecting threats, detecting activities. Don't spend as much time as I would like to see on the back end. How do we respond to something when it happens? Obviously, that's your world, that's your professional career, and I know we can all learn a lot from you. But before we get there, would you mind? I've had the pleasure of breaking bread with you a couple times and getting to know you as a person, and I think introducing the audience to the person of Chris Labe is important. I think you're a good quality individual, a great American. And so tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you very much. That after an intro like that, it's humbling. My family's been in this industry for almost 100 years. My grandfather went to work for Goodyear in the 20s, and my dad worked for Exxon for 40 years. And then I went to work for DuPont for 12 years. And now that was 22 years ago. So we're now hitting about 100 years as a family. This is where I feel really comfortable. It's an area that kind of feels part of my blood. I was fortunate to meet a beautiful woman in 19 and get married in 1995. We have 5 kids. We live in New Orleans, which is right on the Gulf Coast, which is the heart of this industry for North America. Um, uh, After being, I was taking my turn in the corporate life at DuPont, but I decided that I wanted to take a shot at entrepreneurship and take a little more control of my future. Also, I wanted to just be closer to home with my
Mhm.
kids and my wife. So I started inFRONT in 2002. And if you have a background at DuPont, you realize that safety culture is so core. I mean, it's something that's you just leave no doubt about when you work for DuPont. So with that sort of perspective, I found the assets of a company that had really good tools that we could pivot onto this space that we're in now, which is emergency readiness and response. And so I jumped off into entrepreneurship, looking to build tools to keep people safe, and that was gosh, a long time ago. I can't believe I've been associated with something for 2 decades.
I feel you. We'll hit 20 years in 2025, coming up in May with Pref-Tech, and it does go by fast.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you've combined this professional, say, generational legacy of working in industrial facilities with entrepreneurship. Was there a triggering event? Was there some incident or something that happened that cause you to finally say, all right, it's time for me to try to do something better than what I've experienced thus far?
I had to have it, DuPont was a great place to work. It was a great
Mhm.
experience. We lived overseas. It was fantastic, but we had our first child, and it was a demanding job. I was traveling a lot, and every time I came back from 3 days on the road, she was different, and
Mm,
that started to cause things to fall out of balance for me.
sure.
So I also, um, there's being working for a big company has a lot of benefits, but also it doesn't have this high of a high or low of a low that you
Mm,
have when you have your own business, as you know,
mhm,
Sean.
mhm.
I kind of like the roller coaster. It's been, I
I
mean,
was,
there are days when I look back and go, "Hey, can you take me back, please, DuPont?" But usually that goes away, and we're on our way back up.
I speak with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't think I've ever heard one say that they started a business for family reasons to spend more time with family. That's usually the
Yeah.
cost they pay is for starting a business. So, what a cool story,
Oh,
and
thanks.
uh, I'm sure your family's better for it. But I would agree with you. The highs are high, and the lows can be pretty low, and obviously a lot of burdens on your shoulders. Um, it's tough. It's tough to start a business. It's tough to run a business, even when it becomes mature. But what were some of the initial challenges you faced starting this journey of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Well, my dad used to quote my grandfather to me, and he would say, in this business is just one damn thing after another. And what he was saying is that it's just, in high hazard, which is where inFRONT
Mhm.
focuses. We focus, really on
Mhm.
dangerous facilities. That's petrochemicals and refining.
Sure.
It's really challenging. It is the most dangerous manufacturing industry we have. So there's a clear need for what we're doing. And eh, that having that as a context really was what drove me. There's
Mhm.
really I think we have our team is tight knit because we think we're working on the right things for the right
Mhm.
people, and so having that background in the industry is something that drove me to want to
Mhm.
do what I'm doing now.
Mhm.
The challenges we faced, another aspect of the industry is that we're challenging a traditional systemic thought about how to be ready for and respond to
Mhm.
emergencies.
Mhm.
For so long, it's been an analog process. I mean, this industry has been around for
Mhm.
over 100 years as well, and they're still doing things the same way they used to do back in the old days, especially in our area.
Yeah.
So in an industry that's really cautious about changing traditional methods, it was a lengthy effort to gain momentum.
Mhm.
Our biggest competition has been uh, apathy, or not apathy, but
Mhm.
inertia. It's good enough what we're doing, and that's that.
Right.
So we've broken through by listening actively and delivering transformational
Mhm.
improvements. But overcoming that inertia and that resistance to change is has always been the real challenge for us. Lately, we've been spending more time telling that story by our marketing. So thanks for this
Mhm.
opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And word of
That's it.
mouth referrals, which is propelled by our high touch service. So.
Mhm. Cool, cool. So there may be some listeners who, we throwing around terms like high hazard,
Oh, right.
petrochemical, industrial. Let's narrow that focus for Chris and inFRONT and the products you provide, you bring to market. Describe that ideal client. Maybe narrow down what is your ideal industry? What does your ideal client look like?
Really, it's a great question. Any dangerous site that has more than 100 people on site at any
Okay.
time is ideal. I
Okay.
mean, we have clients who have 100, we have clients who have 5,000 people on site.
Hmm.
The core challenges are quite similar, but obviously when you scale, it becomes way more
Hmm.
complex. And this pretty much
Sure.
maps to Homeland Security and Coast Guard regulated sites.
Okay.
And we're heavily weighted toward, obviously, as I said before, refiners and chemical manufacturers.
Mhm. Very good. So as you start to think about that ideal customer, what are the problems or challenges they have that excite you, that you really focus what are the challenges or problems you want to resolve for those customers?
And in that set, that patch we just defined, that they face a common set of problems no matter what size they are. So,
Hmm.
and what drives is the number one is it's a high risk to people in everyday operations. When somebody goes to work at a bank, unless they're worried about a holdup, when they lock their car to
Hmm.
walk inside, they feel probably safer
Sure.
inside than they do in their car. In our
Hmm.
industry, you have to be, you have to lift your game when you leave your car. You really focus on the operational intensity that's necessary to go home at the end of the day. And that's
Hmm.
that's that's the key to what sets our industry apart. That makes it a lot tougher. So it's also a challenging physical setting. There's a lot
Yeah.
of toxic materials. It's rough. It's all mostly there's a lot of outside
Hmm.
work. It's hot. It's loud. It's really there's pipe racks and spheres and things that get in the way of technology solutions. You also have a transient workforce. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine that you have to reteach what you're teaching as an emergency response team to people who might work at 3 sites in the last month.
Hmm.
So that's really, really a challenge as well. And then tight budgets. Our industry is very operationally intense when it comes to, financial management, and
Hmm.
that getting things done that are important and prioritizing them is a challenge as well.
Yeah, so it's a great segue into another question that I thought of for you, and that is, as a business, you're
Mhm.
offering a solution to cost-sensitive customers. How do you differentiate yourself from other companies? And I'm talking at the company level, not necessarily the product level, but at the company
Mhm.
level, how are you different? How are you different from the other salespeople, business owners that show up to the doors of these refineries?
Well, I mean, it's in the simplest way to say that we're the only company that is focused on emergency readiness and response in our industry. There's other companies who offer mustering, but they do it as an add-on function to what they really
Mhm.
do. And there's really three categories there. There's the access control, which is familiar to your
Mhm.
end of the market. There's
Right.
visitor management because they're
Mhm.
clocking people in and they have access to some information about who's on site. And then there are device platforms that are used for data capture, whether it's real-time
Mhm.
location or handhelds for, there's some overlap with what PAC systems use for
Mhm.
devices that are used for remote locations, for example. Having those aspects as a core product make it a logical extension to think about doing mustering. But this is such a challenging market that you have to really know what you're doing. And the way we differentiate ourselves in terms of both product and domain expertise is we realize that a lot of the things that need to be done in our industry are unobvious to people who haven't lived the problem. And so the way we built the company and built the product is that
Mhm.
we listen to the people who have lived the problem and they really guide us.
Yeah, I think I connect with you on that as I've looked at Pref-Tech over our almost 20 years now. Uh, I found that the more we're able to focus, the more we're able to, niche down is what some
Mhm.
entrepreneurs would call it, really focus on a specific set of customers and how to resolve their pain, their
Yeah.
histories, their commonalities.
Yep.
We've been a much better service provider. So it sounds like our two organizations agree on that approach. Let's be really good at something versus do a bunch of things not necessarily as great as we could do each of them.
I think you put your finger on the kinship we feel with
Mhm.
Pref-Tech is that there's a lot of sort of horizontal providers that go
Right.
real shallow, or go very shallow
Mhm.
and don't really dive deep. And in this industry, back to what my grandfather said, it's one damn thing after another. If you don't really know it, you're going to get burned, and
Sure.
that's dangerous.
Sure. So let's get down into the product level. Specifically, I want to talk about your AllClear mustering solution.
Mhm.
So if I'm one of your clients or potential clients rather, and you show up and you got a few minutes to tell me why you're different
Yep.
and help me understand why AllClear mustering from inFRONT is different than what I might find in the traditional mustering market. How would you do that?
Yeah. Well, there are lots of them. So in the interest of time, I can give you a couple of them. But first, our mustering is a part of our emergency readiness and response platform. So mustering
Mhm.
is core. It's important to find people when something goes wrong. And when we talk about mustering in the AllClear context, we talk about the covenant between the counters and the counted. The
Okay.
counted promise to take action to account for themselves, and the counters promise to rescue the counted if they need it. That's the deal.
Mhm.
Um, and there can't be any doubt that each party has fulfilled their duty. And
Mhm.
that's one of the fundamental gaps or seams that exist in other solutions is when the counted, the people I described
Mhm.
before, a contractor who may or may not have been at this site, may not be familiar with it, when they present themselves to an all clear system, there's no doubt whether or not they've succeeded or not. And so they know that if they haven't succeeded, they will fulfill their duty in some other way, some backup way, for example.
What are
So
those
that's
ways that I would if I'm registering in a mustering location, how would I know that? What's that feedback look like?
So I can draw a contrast. So if you use an access control reader, which is really
Hmm.
common, you have a small LED and a little beep that happens
Hmm.
on that reader. In AllClear, the device is built to give you a clear audible and visual feedback about whether or
Okay.
not you succeeded. It'll also tell you whether it's working or not, and it also lets you know if it's dead. So the person with the badge never doubts it because when they get that positive response, they only get it if the counters have their data. There's nothing's
I
going to
got
get
you.
lost in the middle.
I got
So, so that creates the integrity you're looking for on both sides. So when the counters see that information, they know that
you.
they feel good that the system's up, and we give them a lot of other detail about the data that makes it
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
actionable. For example, we'll get to that in a second, I think. But both sides, it's like if you and I were just like in a school classroom. If I
Hmm.
say Sean, you raise your hand and say here, you saw me write down your name. You know you've accounted for yourself.
Hmm.
It's the same. It's the same process, except in a very large, complex, dangerous site with a network. That's the key.
Great, great.
Uh, and I got one more if you want one more.
Yeah, yeah. I was about to
All right.
ask, what are some other differentiators from maybe a traditional mustering solution that clients would be considering?
I think there's the other solutions as since they're sort of add-ons to the whatever the core product might be I described
Hmm.
earlier. Um, there's there's an aspect that they're not working on, which is for a site to be great at mustering, it has to be ready. AllClear
Mm,
sets itself apart as a platform that helps the emergency response team maintain a better state of readiness so they can respond when necessary. Nobody else does that.
right, right. So you actually practice before you play. Hopefully you
Yeah.
don't have to play ever, but in the
Well, yeah, we have
event you do, you're practiced.
yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. We having I didn't mention, which is that the ability to do this in a way, AllClear can do it in a granular way. You can do it in a way that allows you to drill these folks that aren't familiar with the site more often because
Mhm.
we can do it so fast. And that's
Right.
the thing about practicing. I used to have a coach that said good teams perform in games better than they practice, but great teams practice great, and
Right.
that's one of the things that AllClear holds sites accountable to do as well.
Yep, very much so. So this all clear solution has been around a while. How have you seen it evolve over the year? What have been some major lessons learned that have gone into the product over the years?
Well, like the other alternatives, we began with mustering. I mean, we quickly
Hmm.
realized from there, though, that what we really needed to focus on was delivering actionable data before, during, and after an emergency. That's really
Hmm.
what they need. So, and what do I mean by actionable data? It's really we see it as having four important traits. One is it's got to be prompt. If you're if you're rescuing people, stale data doesn't do you any good. You need to know that it's fresh as well, and AllClear
Hmm.
tells you that it's got to be intuitive and detailed. And that sounds like a contradictory set of terms, but I know our user community says, look, I don't have time to look at dense columns of information. I want to be able to
Hmm.
look at it and know if I'm in good shape, and if I'm not, then I want the details.
Right.
So
Right.
AllClear gives them a visual understanding of what the status is, both before, during, and after
Hmm.
an event. And then they're able to drill down and find out if there's an exception that's causing a problem, and that's a second one. The third one has to be trustworthy. They have to know that that data is good or not. And so,
Hmm.
for example, back to the idea of it being prompt, if I look at a piece of information and it's older, I know that's probably not so good. Or if I can
Hmm.
see through the health of my system, the AllClear system, I can see that
Hmm.
well, this section of the system is down because there's been an explosion. Well, I know that any data that's associated with that might not be as trustworthy. So they're able to trust the information that they have. And finally, it's got to be resilient and accessible. So they have to be able to get it. There's a lot of stakeholders in emergency response. They may not be in the same place. They could be in the field. They could be in the center of excellence at a headquarters. But having that data be resilient and accessible is key to getting the job done. And resiliency and accessibility is also one that was driven out of the pain of finding that you couldn't access or read a paper log, for example. So
Hmm.
those are the types of things that make it key. If you can't read it, you can't use it. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Very good. So go
I'm
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead. Continue.
So that led us, the more on the journey, it led us to realizing that we had to give our users more granularity of information for higher
Hmm.
risk areas because there's a lot of people on the site. Some people might be in the cafeteria, but some people might be right next to the hypercompressor, and you want to know how that lays out. You also it's important to know where and how many certain response resources you have. So
Hmm.
readiness status of your responders, and then readiness of the responders' equipment and tools. There's a whole inspection, testing, and maintenance aspect of that. That
Hmm.
if you have you got foam for a certain type of hazard and it's outdated and past its shelf life, well, that's bad. And so those things need to be up to date as well.
Yeah, awesome. So it sounds like there have been years and years of this customer engagement, product refinement, so customers aren't buying some fly by night, brand new type product when they're investing in your solution. So that's pretty amazing. I think few
Thanks.
software companies I know have put that much time and effort. But if I am an existing customer of yours, how does that does that feedback between you and product development, how does that all work? What does that ecosystem look like? What am I getting besides the product? What kind of feedback and how can I contribute as a customer to the refinement and improvement of products?
Well, you picked up on what I said earlier about how what we build, every feature we have in AllClear is built through a process of getting feedback from the end user
Mhm.
community. So, and while we try to we have created a single product for this application for
Mhm.
our space. Um, we go through a prioritization process based on the feedback of those end users. So, customers are frequently asked about what we can do that we aren't doing currently. It's important for us to have have a positive net promoter score from our users that we're doing it what's right. And also
Mhm.
because this is such a hypercritical uh, space that we're in, we have a pretty high touch support service and after sales activity that keeps us in tune with what the needs are. So, some of the one of the guiding principles of our sales team is that they're the headlights of the product. They're out there talking to people who
Right,
aren't
they're the
even
headlights.
customers yet and making sure that we have the feedback from even might be outside of our realm of existing customers. And then again, as I said, existing customers are a great source um, of giving us feedback for future features.
So how do you, as the business owner, responsible for where you're going to spend your money, how you're going to invest your money, how do you make those decisions to decide, I've heard some feedback, this will benefit customers, I'm willing to invest in the product to develop in this way. What is your process for that decision?
Well, we have prior to COVID, we had a pretty robust in-person process. We would meet on a
Mhm.
regular basis. There are some anti-competitive issues that we got to be sensitive to as well. But we cycle all the product ideas through a representative cross section of our user community,
Okay.
and then we give them a chance to prioritize it. So we haven't heard. I mean, honestly, we some of the stuff we do it doesn't seem it's counterintuitive, especially if you're coming from a product perspective.
Mhm.
I like to say we're starting from the problem out. We hear what the customers are dealing with, and we build something to answer that. And we're not trying to come with an answer before we hear the question. So,
Sure.
so all of our new future features lie among our end users, and but we can't build everything all at once. So we have a prioritization process internally that allows us to test. Okay, how reusable is this? It would be something that could benefit everyone? Also, there are it can be in some cases opportunity driven. If there's a
Mhm.
market space we're not in, uh, that might drive our prioritization as well.
Very good. I want to ask you a tough question. If you need a second or two to process it, please do.
All
But
right.
I, coming from the security side, obviously, over the years, I've engaged a lot of end users with respect to security systems.
Hmm.
And one thing that I've heard as I've started to talk with customers about mustering solutions, which are prevalent in numerous environments beyond high hazard environments.
Hmm.
But as I've engaged customers about mustering, they tend to want to just use maybe a rudimentary type mustering solution that's a
Yeah.
component of the access control system.
Yep.
How would you discuss that challenge? A customer coming back to you and saying, "Hey, look, our access control system has a mustering feature built into it. We're just going to use that. Maybe it's free or very low cost, and I don't believe we need
Yeah.
what AllClear provides." How would you respond to that?
Well, I think there are certain market segments where the others are fine.
Mhm.
They're not as hypercritical as our industry is. And there are many of them. Um, I think that the one thing you didn't mention that's a big player as well is that the software is pretty much already there. Like they pretty much
Mhm.
have what they need to do mustering, and so it's the easiest path of least resistance. And I get it. I mean, I understand that we're asking them to do something that's a little bit more effort, but um, from our perspective, there are some real disqualifiers for our specific industry
Mhm.
that make being penny wise today is pound foolish for tomorrow. And
Mhm.
that
Sure.
we talk about it being the problem. If you lose somebody, the consequences are dramatic.
Yeah. Sure.
Morale, careers. We've seen plants being sold because
Wow.
they've failed at that. So the stakes are really, really high, and PAC systems are really pretty much every PAC system we interact with is great at being a security solution. They're fantastic platforms, but what makes them great makes them vulnerable in a mustering setting. So, one of the good examples is that you need resiliency and fault tolerance at a gate. When going through a portal, you don't want to doing shift change for the network to go out and you've got people waiting at the gate. So a lot of the activity happens at the edge, and that means that if that happens during a mustering situation, that information, if you're using that same solution to count people, can be trapped, and it gives the counters lag. It doesn't give them what they need. And sometimes things that make sense in the context of security don't make sense in the mustering context. So give you an example. So there's a few examples that I think of. This is just from the literature from certain PACS mustering solutions. If the mustering module is offline, as I said before, a badge holder could get a positive response and think that they accounted for themselves. So they think they did their job, but they didn't. And that's worse because they don't know to go and extend themselves to let people know that they're there.
Right. To your example earlier, they didn't see the teacher raise or write down the name when taking accountability.
Right. Exactly. And it makes sense in this context of security. If you have a bad badge read, it didn't work, you're going to try that barrier. It's not going to open. You got a badge again.
Immediate feedback from the portal itself. Yeah.
There's no such, as you said earlier, there's not a lot of visual or audible feedback, and there's no consequence of not being successful there. So that's a big one. The other aspect is that it's a very dynamic situation in an event. So most events in our industry happen in a unit, and a unit might have 25 people in it. The goal is to keep that event in that unit, because if you can just muster those folks and keep everybody back at work, it's a massive savings for the facility. If you have to stop work across the facility to muster, that's extremely costly. But a PAC system, many of them are designed so that if you, for example, you start in the unit, you can't first of all, most don't have the granularity, but if they did, they couldn't escalate an event to take on more areas of the plant.
Gotcha.
Similarly, if you have an event where you've got a toxic gas leak and people are assembled at a safe shelter and the wind shifts and that gas is now headed towards that safe shelter, you can't, in an access control system, clear that location out without actually taking people out of the count, which invalidates the actual exercise. You actually have lost count of who you have on site, and you're pretty much in the dark. Yeah. So all these things speak to the brittleness of a mustering process using a PAC system, and AllClear gets around all of that because it's extremely agile in this context.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from you is you've understood how events work in these plants, and you've built in agility within the system to account for people when some of those things may change. Whereas a system that may capture card read information, location information for security purposes just won't have those features.
And they're not necessary in other verticals. So
sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It makes sense. What about a success story? Can you tell us a success story, a real life example, or a case study where AllClear has made a significant impact on emergency response, maybe save some lives or equipment or assets?
Yep. So there was we have a couple of different contexts that we work in. One is sort of run and maintain. We also do turnarounds. And turnarounds are really hazardous because you have people who aren't familiar with the site, and they come in for the project.
Explain a turnaround to maybe some
thanks a lot. I'm using jargon again. So turnaround being to keep the plant safe, and maybe to add a little capacity, you have to take it down on a periodic basis, make sure everything's in good shape, and then you put it back up. But when it's down,
maintenance period, essentially.
Exactly. But these are mills. They're cranking out products. So when they're down, you got to get it back up as fast as possible. So they throw a lot of people at it and get it done as quickly as possible. So you can go from 500 people on site to 3,000 on site for one of these turnarounds. So it's a real challenge. So we have a solution that expands the system temporarily so that they can accommodate those thousands of people, that big population growth. But you have this big population growth of people who aren't familiar with the site. So one of the ones we're really proud of is that during a turnaround, there was a release of a toxic gas. At the time of the event, there were 250 people in that area, and the customer was able to account for 100% of them in 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Wow.
So, and that's hurting cats, Sean. I mean, and no
Yeah.
shade on it and contractors. These guys go to a lot of different plants, knowing what to do. The emergency response team took the time to set it up so that people knew what to do. And we have sort of this dark humor in our industry, our end of the industry, which is that people's IQs drop in half in duress. Like
Sure.
you have to have muscle
It's
memory.
stress. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have the right instinct. So getting a transient population to react that well, that fast, we're really proud of that customer. We're proud to be part of that solution.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was just thinking, I don't think I can account for my kids in the house in 7 minutes.
Well, that's true of me too. I should drink my own Kool-Aid on that one. Yeah.
So something you and I have discussed, it's been kind of eye-opening for me. We engage large commercial clients, usually when we're uh, discussing, negotiating, resolving a problem for our customers with the solution we provide. We're engaging different stakeholders. So in our world, in the security world, we speak to security managers, we speak to a lot of IT folks, and facility folks. You deal with some additional entities, and so how have you seen maybe some differences in motivations, different differences in personalities even, but how have you seen some of the different people you engage, different entities within a large customer that may add some flavor to the engagement?
Yeah, I think that's a really astute observation. We cross the same paths. Pref-Tech and inFRONT in um, uh, drive, selling our
Mhm.
services and products. Um, and we have pretty much the same set of stakeholders that you have for security, but we add a few extras. So these are the safety and emergency response teams.
Mhm.
There are that's a group that they don't have a big budget. They typically have been piggybacking on the security budget because the good times from 2001 on, when people are really expanding systems, it was a way to get something better
Gotcha.
than paper. But having that audience, in addition to what you already have, is a good way to make it makes us sticky. Once we get in
Mhm.
there, it's got a lot of stakeholders. On top of that, once you get into the safety and emergency response group, they can provide real benefits to the operations group. The concept that I talked about before with the turnarounds, that's a
Mhm.
huge advantage for turnaround managers who want to know how many people they have at any moment in time on site. During run and maintain, people run operating units on a site. Getting the granularity of information that inFRONT has is also a value too.
Awesome. So, what advice would you give to an entity that fits your customer profile? What advice would you give on going about evaluating mustering solutions, maybe selling internally the mustering solutions when they come up with them? Who should be there? Who should be on kind of on the committee, decision committee?
Mhm.
Maybe some best practices you've seen when it comes to the buying process.
That's a great question. So this is a there's a there's several ways to go about this, but I think this one is pretty much down the middle. Um, I would run a series of drills in a relatively short period of time. It's really
Mhm.
what the appetite for the site is. It could be one a week for a month or one a month
Mhm.
for 4 or 5 months. That'll
Mhm.
reveal the gaps if they're looking for the right things. One of the things we did a while back was we ran a hide a worker challenge where you go and take somebody from the site and you put them in the emergency operations center,
Uh-huh.
and most of the time that person will be accounted for by somebody on the site, and they haven't been. And that reveals a really stark gap in
Right.
the system.
Right.
And that's kind of I'm saying the quiet part out loud. A lot of fudging goes on in most
Hmm. Sure.
mustering scenarios.
Right.
Um, from that, task a team, and I think this, as you said, the stakeholders really are, the EHS
Hmm.
management, emergency
Hmm.
response. It's a separate segment of that same safety organization. Security, IT, operations, maintenance also has a stake in here.
Hmm.
And then they'll all have different perspective on opportunities for improvement, and then get those down.
Sure.
And then set goals for both time and accuracy. Our sort of boilerplate is 100% in 15 minutes for a full site.
Mhm.
For if you're unit focused, you don't have 15 minutes. You got a couple minutes. How are
Yeah.
you going to get that? And so then find a solution provider that understands those challenges and can be a guide in helping you navigate not only the development of the solution, but also how to navigate the politics and challenges of budgeting and justifying it to the business.
Yeah. Uh, Playing devil's advocate here, I hear you say that to me, and I'm like, man, I've got a ton of work to do already. I'm playing the role of client here. I've got a ton of work to do already. Now you're asking me to do additional work. I just don't have time for it, Chris.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
why should I do all that?
I wish I could give those people more time because the stakes here are enormous. Getting this wrong is something that frequently it requires a painful lesson for some people to realize. What we see in a lot of cases is that it's a neighboring facility has an issue and that awakens the site next door saying, "Oh yeah, we need to think about this." But
Mhm.
if you extrapolate, one mistake to what it could mean for not only that person and that person's family, the promise the company made to send that person home at the end of the day, and then also there's an ancillary impact on people on the site. There's morale, loss of a colleague. There is, there is really an awful experience that comes from being examined by the Chemical Safety Board after something like this.
Mhm.
And then, I've seen a number of plants have to be sold out from a given logo just to manage the fallout from getting this wrong. So.
Right.
We believe that we're solving the problem, and
Mhm.
you define the problem by something that if you don't get it right, if you don't fix
Mhm.
it, it could burn it all down. And
Right.
I don't mean that literally. I mean it could
Right.
cause the collapse of a really vital organization if it's not done right.
Right. So it's the balance. It's catastrophic risk. The
Yeah,
potential for catastrophic risk is very high, though the probability of it happening may be low. If it does happen, it's catastrophic.
yeah,
It's not like a little fender bender in a vehicle or something. Like
yeah,
it could
right.
be critical. And um, you know, I think, especially in today's business environment, consumers care about how well the brand is managing the environment and governing their entities and taking care of their people. So um, I think it's a hat and a feather to those companies that say, yes, we actually do care about our people. We care about our employees. It's our employees who deliver and create the products and services and deliver the products and services. And we are going to do what it takes to protect them to the fullest extent. And hopefully they'll choose AllClear. If they were to choose AllClear, let's get into the future. What are some developments? What some innovations that we can expect from inFRONT in the coming years?
We're focused on enriching that, and integrating that emergency response experience for our
Okay.
customers. So, near term, we're excited about enhancements to our ERT roster. So we keep a really robust track of the emergency response team,
Okay.
their qualifications, what
Mhm.
they can and can't do, and we also want to add more rich data in our maps of the facility that will
Mhm.
help the ERT make better decisions. And those are going to be exciting. Longer term, there are some obvious ways. I mean, I'm gonna hit your buzzword bell, but there are obvious ways to harness AI to make it
Sure.
easier for our customers to find ways to improve. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a no-brainer. We have really great data. That's one thing that sets us apart is that we record everything that happens during an event,
Mhm.
which allows the emergency response team to analyze and improve for the next time, and that's giving them a
Game
better way to
film.
mine that.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. We get game film
That's
for
exactly right.
fraction. Yeah.
Exactly
That's
right. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So if I'm a customer and I've listened to all or a portion of this conversation, I want to get in touch with you and your team to learn more. How do I do that?
Well, you can certainly contact your favorite Pref-Tech representative, but also you can contact us directly. We have our website is www.infrontglobal.com,
Okay.
and we have an 800 number that's you always get a human. It's 800-256-2003.
Awesome. Well, Chris, we're winding down on time here. I just want to say thank you. I've enjoyed getting to know you at a personal level and also as a professional level. I've always been intrigued by the way you think and your care for customers and your focus on the customers, while at the same time ensuring that your employees are taken care of and you're creating an environment where great products and services can be delivered. So I just want to say thank you again for your time, and look forward to the years to come and seeing what you can accomplish and your team can accomplish. And hopefully we can accomplish things together. And hopefully we make many, many more great stories to tell and keep a lot of our customers, employees safe.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate being out here, and I really admire what you're building over there at Pref-Tech.
Thank you.